Today we're going to talk about the topic of free will versus determinism. And it's an interesting topic in that there's a lot writing on it. It also marks a bit of a sea change in the course because so far what we've been doing is looking at particular theorists and kind of what they look at. But when it comes to the nature of philosophy, that's not really the way we do it. That's more of like a history of ideas class. What history really, or what philosophy actually does is it looks at topics. Issues, and issues that typically have a lot writing on them. So free will versus determinism is a great topic to look at because, again, the answer to it is going to end up having some major repercussions on other things that we believe about ourselves, things that we believe about our society, how we interact. And in trying to figure out a good place to start on the free will determinism topic, maybe we can start with what I'm going to refer to as the principle of incompatibility. And what most people believe is that whatever free will is going to turn out to be, that it's, or better yet, whatever determinism is going to turn out to be, it's going to be incompatible with any significant sense of free will. And I add that word significant sense because typically most people believe that free will is a necessary condition for the ascription of moral responsibility. So what that means is if you don't have free will, we're not going to be able to hold people morally responsible for their actions. Now it may be that we need to do other things in addition to have free will in order to be held morally responsible, but again that's a necessary condition. As far as free will and determinism goes, determinism is a sort of all or nothing proposition. Determinists believe that every single action you perform is somehow determined. And we'll look at some of the different arguments for determinism in a bit. Free will theorists don't claim that. That is, they don't claim that every single thing you do is free. Instead, they think that some actions that you do are free, right? So they're totally willing to admit that, you know, the height that you have is something over which you have no control, the time of your death, likely something over which you have no control. But other things, like whether I'm going to wear a gray or plaid shirt today, seems to be the things about which many believe we do indeed have control. But again, let's look at this connection between free will and moral responsibility, because that's the big payoff there. And let's talk about a few stories here and see if we can build our intuitions on this. Let's say it's a rainy day. And I'm working on my roof because there's a leak, and a strong gust of wind comes up in sort of an unpredictable way, knocks me off the roof. And as I'm falling, I'll say I see somebody below me, and I do indeed fall on the person. Let's say we kill the person. Am I a murderer? Now, interestingly, there's no doubt that I just fell on this person and I killed them. The question is whether or not I should be held morally responsible for it, all right? And I think that most people would say, well, no, right? I mean, once I'm in gravity's grip, there's not much I can do. Granted, I saw the person while I was falling, but once I'm falling, there's really no control I have over gravity's course, so you're not going to hold me responsible. Indeed, if police officers saw me do this, they would likely run up and say, they wanted to arrest me, they'd come up and say, are you okay, right? And I'd say, yeah, well, fortunately this person broke my fall. But if we switch it up, right, if it's not me who's falling, but instead it's, let's say, Clark Kent who's falling, he sees the person below him, he lands on the person and kills him. Well, now I think that would be murder, right? He'd be held morally responsible. Clark Kent is, of course, Superman, and he has the power to act other than he does. So again, the connection here seems to be really, really important. Having free will seems to be a necessary condition for being able to hold people morally responsible. Well, that's important because, look, if people can't be held morally responsible, then a lot of stuff that we currently believe about ourselves, that we believe about our society, must be wrong. For example, our entire judicial system is there to determine whether or not people are innocent or guilty. And if people cannot be held morally responsible for their actions, no one's guilty of anything, right? No one's really innocent either, in which case our judicial system doesn't make sense. Pride doesn't make sense if people can't be held morally responsible, because pride is this warm feeling I get when I've done a good job, but If it's something I had no control over, if it's something I had to do, well, I shouldn't feel prideful, but then I also shouldn't feel guilty, right? So guilt, regret, pride, all these things presuppose that people can't be held morally responsible. Indeed, all of ethics, right, is at risk if people can't be held morally responsible, because in ethical theory, after all, what I'm trying to do is figure out whether my action is good or bad. But things can't rightly be good if I wasn't free in doing them. If I'm somehow forced, I'm neither good nor bad. I'm forced. I'm only good or bad if I somehow have the ability to act other than I do. That is, if I have free will. So connecting the dots here, right? So if determinism is true, people don't have free will because the two aren't compatible. If people don't have free will, they can't be held morally responsible. So that would mean that if determinism's true, people are never morally responsible for what they do, right? This creates quite a problem. This leads into what we call the dilemma of determinism, and you can find this in the introductory section to section 4 of your text. And I think it's misnamed a little bit, but it lays out this dilemma. And what a dilemma is it offers you an either or situation, but then either way you go, you kind of are screwed, right? You end up not getting what you hoped. So the first claim in the dilemma is the one that we just talked about, if determinism's true. And in this case, in the dilemma of determinisms, determinism would be the claim that all of our actions have a cause, right? The claim is that if my actions are caused, I can't be held morally responsible for them. That's the first claim in the dilemma. And to see why, consider an example. Let's say that I'm in Pottery Barn and I'm looking at a table full of plates. And some person comes in and pushes me really hard from behind, and I in turn hit the table and I knock over the plates. The question then is, should I be held morally responsible for paying for the plates? Do I have to pay for the plates? Now, unquestionably, I'm the one who hit the table and I broke them. But am I responsible for breaking them? And I think most of you would say, well, no, because somebody pushed me, right? They're the ones who are responsible. So what we get from this is, I think, a really powerful intuition. And that intuition is that moral responsibility flows up the causal chain. If there's a person outside of me pushing me, I'm not responsible. The outside thing that's pushing me is responsible. Well, if we replace the person with an outside cause, well, I'm not responsible then. The outside cause is responsible. And typically for causal determinism, there are two main causes for our actions, either our environment or our biology, right? That whole nature-nurture debate that used to be such the rage. Now I think my psychologist thinks it's some sort of combination of the two, right? But again, either way, it doesn't look like we get moral responsibility, right? So if my actions are really the result of some outside cause, well, something in my environment, I'm not responsible. My environment is. It pushed me. But if my actions are a result of my biology, my neurology, the way I'm constituted, then again, I don't think I can be held morally responsible, right? So again, we get our first claim in the dilemma. If determinism's true, people can't be held morally responsible. It seems then to salvage responsibility, we'd want to deny determinism, right? And that's what the second claim in the dilemma says. It says if indeterminism's true. Well, if determinism's the claim that all actions are caused, indeterminism would be the claim that at least some of our actions are uncaused. That's the opposite of caused. Well, uncaused is one and the same as random, right? So let's ask the question, can I be held morally responsible for random occurrences? And it doesn't look like I can, right? So the second claim in the dilemma is that if indeterminism is true and some of my actions are uncaused or random, I still can't be held morally responsible. And again, let's build those intuitions. Why? Well, let's try a couple of examples here. Let's say I have some weird, it's not even a condition, right, because that would be a cause, but I have some weird situation in which my arm does random things. Like for no reason at all, my arm just does stuff, right? So one day I'm walking down the hall and my dean's next to me and my random arm just goes out and punches my dean really hard. Can I be held morally responsible for what my random arm did? Well, clearly not. It was random. I didn't try to do it, right? So if my arm acts in uncaused ways, I can't be held responsible. Let's try another example to pump our intuitions here. Let's say that I get my bank statement from Bank America, and yet again it's got all these fees on it, and I decide I'm just going to go postal. So I load up my 9mm and I drive to the bank, I roll down my window, and I just start squeezing off rounds. I just start shooting up the front of the bank, right? Well, let's say at that very moment that I'm just randomly shooting at the front of the bank, there's a bank robbery underway, and lo and behold, as I'm shooting, those bank robbers have everybody lying on the ground, and I just happen to kill both the bank robbers. I just stopped the bank robbery. Am I a hero, right? Well, clearly not, right? I'm a bad person. I should be thrown in jail. I tried to hurt people by shooting them. So if something random occurs, if it's sort of an accident, we can't be held morally responsible. Now notice if we bump it up a level, you say, well, okay, I see that for my actions, but what about my desires, right? If my desires come to me unheeded, if they come to me sort of randomly, can I be held morally responsible for random desires that pop up in my head? Well, again, no. But again, if we go to the first premise, I can't be held responsible if those desires are caused in me either. Well, the third premise in the dilemma is one of those two things has to be true. Either things are caused or they're uncaused. Either determinism or indeterminism is true. Now we get the conclusion. Either way, people are never morally responsible for their actions, right? So this dilemma poses what might be considered like the free will determinism problem, right? How do we salvage moral responsibility? How do we get that notion back?